This week, we're going to learn how we build UI using a framework called Angular. The framework is made by Google and it is written in TypeScript. So we will be coding in TypeScript. Now, why we type in TypeScript? One, this way we can ensure that the code that we write don't have any bugs, especially that JavaScript is a dynamically typed language. So anybody can easily pass any data structure or type instead of any other data structure and type and break the application. So we like to type our code always once we realize that we need to write code without bugs. Now that also apply on the back end. I know that we did learn how we build an application just using Express in JavaScript, but all you could do is to change the extension from JavaScript to TypeScript and have type safety as you code your backend. And after you do that, you have to compile back to JavaScript before you run your code. Or you could run your TypeScript code immediately in the backend with a different runtime other than Node. There is a runtime taking a lot of attention these days called Dino, and it can run TypeScript immediately without transpiling to JavaScript. So one advantage we get when we use TypeScript is type safety. The second advantage we get when we use TypeScript is our code run faster. Why the code run faster? Because every single JavaScript engine, as it has an interpreter, also there is a unit called compiler. And the compiler is listening, not listening, is profiling all the called functions. And once a function runs multiple times, this compiler is going to mark it as warm. And if the compiler notices that the same function is triggered more than a certain amount, the function becomes hot. And once the function becomes hot, because it's invoked multiple times, the compiler is going to optimize the code to run faster, but that's only if the function runs on the same type. For example, if you have a function, add, and you pass x and y, and you just return x plus y. Now, if x and y is always being called multiple times on the same type, the compiler is going to optimize the code. Basically, we don't know the type of x and we don't know the type of y. The interpreter is going to generate machine code that is capable of handling x and y regardless of the type of x and y. So that could be a concatenation, that could be just an addition, that could be a Boolean plus a string, that could be string plus number, that could be all the cases that might occur because we don't know what's x and we don't know what's y. But if the function add was written in monomorphic code, in monomorphic way, which means it's always called with the same types, let's say this is string and this is string, always two strings, it means that I'm always going to concatenate x and y. In this case, the compiler is going to optimize the code to generate just concatenate x and y, and that code will run certainly faster. At any time we call the function in polymorphic way, because we changed x or y, we revert back to the interpreter code to handle the case. So another advantage we get when we use TypeScript is to get our code run faster, because the logic that you use inside your application might run multiple times, especially for change detection and handling the state in your application. The framework is going to generate monomorphic functions that could be optimized in the JavaScript engine, and your Angular application will run really fast. Any questions so far? Another feature that you will see me using is decorators. Decorators is currently still in experimental phase in TypeScript. However, it's going to be stable in the upcoming release. So what is a decorator? So if I have a person and I want to decorate this person, I'm going to pass it through a decorator. And this person could be now happy, wearing a cowboy hat and a gown. So this person did not have certain features, and now it has certain features. And this person did not have certain behavior, and now it can perform certain behavior. So a decorator as a decorator design pattern is simply taking an object and returning completely different object that has different structure or different properties and different behavior as well. So we will use a decorator in the framework as a way to easily decorate objects. So I get, for example, a single object and I turn this object to stream. I get a certain object and I return what we call angular pipe. I get a certain object and I return an angular module. So we have certain objects that we want to use all the time, but we don't want to call the function and pass this object to this function in every single time I need to get, for example, a stream. Instead, I just decorate this object with the decorator syntax, and that's basically a shortcut to calling a function and passing this function as an input and returning a stream. And the decorator syntax comes with an @ sign and then the decorator name. And then whatever comes after the decorator is the object that you want to decorate. Decorators probably you studied in other programming languages, and they are called what are they called in Java? Huh? Haven't you haven't seen decorators in your life before?
Functions.
In Java, have you seen this @ sign in Java when you build an MVC?
Oh.
Yeah, what is it
Oh
called?
yeah, annotations.
Annotation, thank you. Annotations. So in Java, they call them annotations. In TypeScript, they call them decorators. Potato, potato, tomato, tomato. It's the same thing. We have something, we decorate, we get something else. So that you will see me using decorators a lot as we work with the framework. Now what we're building is a single page application. We call it SPA, single page application. All it means is that my entire application is static HTML file plus JavaScript. And this application is capable of running at the DOM, changing views, doing has data and all without the need of any backend server. However, we will send in the background sometimes AJAX calls to exchange data with the backend to persist or to read data from the backend. However, the DOM does not refresh. We just perform AJAX calls in the backend to change the DOM and retrieve and or persist some data. We call this kind of applications single page applications. That's what we're going to see. Any questions so far? To start working with Angular, we need to download the Angular CLI. And for that, I'm going to use npm install add angular/CLI -g to install the CLI globally into my machine, which will give me a new command called ng. I'm gonna do it. Since I am on Mac, I'm gonna add sudo because this is going to change my global configuration. And now I'm using ng CLI version 15.2.6. So that's the current latest version that we're going to work with. I'm going to build a new project now, and I'm going to say ng new. And I'm going to give the project name, and I'm going to call it first app. And I like to configure my application to use certain settings, but you don't have to do that. I always like to use internal style sheets, internal templates. I'm going to talk about what these are. And I don't want to run any test in the application. So I can configure this later, but I like to configure it as I start a new application, so I don't need to add this configuration every single time. So I'm gonna hit enter, and you will see that I'm gonna get asked a few questions. Do you need router? Nope, not now. Do you need to use any CSS formatter? Nope, CSS is fine with me for now. And an application is created, and all the dependencies are being downloaded. Now, once this step is done, we could go into this directory and explore the Angular application that was created. All right, so now we do have an error. Live response, complete log. I think I am okay anyway. Schematic workflow failed, see above. PM is not able to see a file. I'm going to go into my directory, first app, and try to install the dependencies again. Same. Fifteen to 6. I wonder if that has any relation with my current versions. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is to install Angular CLI, the previous version 15 to 5 instead 15 to 6. I'm just gonna play it safer this time. So remove now in RF first app. Okay. Now I'm gonna generate new project again. I'm gonna change the name just in case. ng-new, and then the directory name. I don't need any other configuration. Let's see if this is going to fail again. Yeah, I certainly have a problem. Okay, let me check my node version. Node version 18.14.0. 18.16.0. Okay, I'm gonna upgrade my node version to the current LTS version, which is 19.9. No, I don't want 19.9. That's bad. Node version. Now I have 19.9. Okay. Sudo n I have nvm. Let me check. You shouldn't have all these issues, but I got them for some reason. NVM. Nope, I don't have NVM. I think we just mentioned the version then. Okay, sudo n, and then I need the version 18.16.0. Good. Node -v 16.0. That's better. Okay. I'm going to remove first app. Okay. Now I'm gonna create a new project. So ng new Monday -s -s -t. I will get the same error. ed Monday. I'm gonna cache protection disabled. I think this is just my machine. Okay. Yeah, it sounds like clearing the cache helped. So there was nothing to do with my node version. All I need to do is to clean my cache. So let's explore the project that was generated. I am in Monday, good. So code. Here we see the files that were generated, and you see that we have some package.json that has all Angular dependencies. And we also have some development dependencies, mostly for tests. And I see some pre-defined scripts, especially the command ng. And there is one called ngserve, which is the command that will help me to compile my application from TypeScript to JavaScript and then bundle the application. So let's explore how can we serve such an application. Your application is basically going to be this index.html. This is the code that you serve. And this application is going to run inside this special tag that was added. So here your entire application will be rendered in this tag. Let me run this command, ngserve, and I say -o to open the browser once a development server is finished. The compilation, as you can see now, there is a process of converting all the TypeScript files to JavaScript files. And when this step is finished, the development server is started on port 4200, and now my browser has started, and I can see that I have some DOM elements rendered. So if I would explore the code that was rendered, we will see that it is basically component that lives here that has this code. So if I remove everything and I add different content, hello Asaad, and I save, I see that my new DOM element is created. So why this DOM element was created, what is the meaning of a component, what is the meaning of a module, and what did exactly happen? That's what we need to answer. So when an Angular application starts, basically, you need to render something as a root element. So we render components. What is a component? Component is basically a new tag. As you can see, I have a tag called app_root. And that is the root component. Where is your application start from? This is similar to a node that has, for example, HTML, which has your entire page. An Angular application need also a node to render the entire application. Here I'm rendering H1. Maybe this H1 has another sibling, which is a paragraph. Maybe this paragraph has another child, which is 3. And maybe 3 has another element, which is called weather. So as you can see, you have to start with an element, and this element is called root element. And in this application, we see it as a tag defined in index.html. Now, which of these elements is rendered for this tag? If we look at the app component file, we see that it has a selector and a decorator and a template and a class, so many things. So let's break everything down. So while an application can start by rendering a component, the default application that we created start by creating a module, and this module is rendering a component. We could do this structure as well. We call this component standalone component. But why do we like to add the component inside an Angular module? And what is the difference between JavaScript module and an Angular module? So think of it this way. A JavaScript module is a file that you could export certain objects and encapsulate other objects, right? This is called JavaScript module. And a JavaScript module may use another JavaScript module, which also encapsulates certain elements and exports some other elements. That's the idea of a module. Just encapsulate certain code together. And in Angular, we like to create what we call Angular module. What is the difference now? An Angular module encapsulates also multiple objects. So we have objects, but these objects are not just plain objects. These are also another Angular objects. So for example, this is a component, this is a directive, this is a pipe, this is a service. So we encapsulate other objects in order to define common logic between them. This way, we avoid importing and exporting all of these objects every single time you like to use them. And think of Angular module is like a feature. For example, you start up your application showing some details about a dashboard and a login form. These require some objects that you create, some forms that you use, and you don't need to export these objects multiple times. Instead, we encapsulate all of this inside an Angular module. Hence, we kind of create a bubble that holds all these objects together. So this is the difference between JavaScript module and an Angular module. And certainly to bring all these objects together, we need to import them using the syntax of JavaScript modules, imports and exports. However, what we create when we decorate this module with add Angular module is to create this virtual bubble that holds other Angular objects within this virtual bubble. And you will see that I'm going to encapsulate always features inside every module. So let's take a look at all of these concepts in code to understand what's happening. So my default application starts basically within main.ts, and main.ts is bootstrapping a module, not a component. So if we look at this module, I see it is simply class that currently holds no logic. But this is not a class, this is an Angular module. Why? Because I decorated I decorated this module with a decorator called ng module. So I converted this class from being a plain class to a class that Angular can control. I created this virtual bubble that can hold other objects inside. Now this decorator is factory decorator, so it accepts some metadata. So I'm passing here an object that represents certain features inside this bubble. So here I'm creating a bubble, main TS, bootstrap this bubble. Inside this bubble, I declare all the objects that you want to use. And as you can see, I need to use an object called app component. So I'm declaring my component inside this bubble. So I have app component. In order to borrow some logic from other bubbles, we use the imports syntax. So this import is importing an Angular module. This import is importing a JavaScript module, which is different. This is just importing the class, the decorator. This is just importing the class app component. But this one, this import in here, is importing an Angular module that holds other logic of code and encapsulate other Angular components. Now we see also something called providers. We will talk about providers sometimes in a couple of days. And I see a bootstrap that, hey, which component is mentioned inside index.html, or what we call the root component. And as you can see, there is a direction to start the application from app components. So I should expect that app component selector or tag name should be mentioned in index.html in order for this application to render successfully.
Sorry, Professor.
Yes.
Your voice is getting broken and you are lagging. Your screen is lagging.
Is that the case for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna repeat then. Is it okay now? Can you hear me
No,
okay?
for the very beginning of the class today.
From the beginning of the class, you hear my voice not clear?
Sometimes broken and your screen is lagging, like the switching the tab and it's lagging.
Yeah,
It's
Professor,
slow.
your voice is fine, but the screen share is lagging.
I wonder if I need to restart my router or anything then. Yes, there's certainly something that need to fix. I have 700 megabytes internet. Okay,